Welcome back to the Femist for the Love of Humanity. This is part 2 of the Femist series on feminine, mystic alchemy. So I want to reiterate some things I said from last episode, and I want to confirm that this is within everybody. This is archetypal. You can experience your own transformation. You can experience your own connectedness to God. You can experience your own relationship with Source from within. Everything that you need is from within. Like, you don't need external validation for these things. But often there will be symbolic external validation for these things as you go along your journey. But everybody is endowed with the innate experience of the divine and Source because it is a part of who they are. It is a part of their design. It is a part of what animates them. The fact that you're alive, the fact that you're here, the fact that you're breathing, the fact that you can feel love. Like, all of these things are a demonstration of your already present connection that you do not have to work for. But sometimes what we do have to work for is the remembrance of it, or the release of resistance to it, or we have to work for our belief in it because we've had so much experience that we've plugged in to the I don't believe file, or the I don't believe overall identification with our experience, that it does sometimes take work to rehabituate ourselves towards our own experience of truth. It takes work to find the voice of truth, or the resonance of truth, or the feeling of truth inside. And I really do think that this is the next level of emotional intelligence. Like, when I was coming up early in my career, I was studying Myers-Briggs, which related to Jung. And I am a fan of Jungian psychology, Jungian dream analysis, Jungian explanations of alchemy. And so I started with things like Myers-Briggs and emotional intelligence and EQI. So as I said, I have a strong interest in personal development, and have for a very long time. And we can use these modalities and these maps to look at ourselves, and they are just that, though, maps. We already have it innately within us. And I think the next level of human intelligence is beyond emotional intelligence. It's energetic intelligence. It's looking even further than just the emotions, and looking at the quality and the taste and the feeling and the experience of energy. And to do that, sometimes we need a language that is more based in metaphor and parable and archetype and symbolism, because as the experience becomes more and more individuated, it's hard to relate to things that are more profane. They're more, like, for instance, I could throw the word tree at you and picture a tree. And we're all going to picture a slightly different tree. The image is not going to be the same. I mean, perhaps we spend a moment in the quintessential cookie cutter shape of the tree that we see. And perhaps for all of us, that's like the giving tree. I'm saying all of us, but that's not even a possibility, because some people are thinking evergreen. Some people are thinking a big cedar. Some people are thinking a redwood. So as we get deeper down this experience of individuation, yet at the same time enlightening and refining and coming closer to truth, our experiences of what this looks like, we can't necessarily share it without finding something as a placeholder that's more of a metaphor, is more of an archetypal figure, to say, oh, yeah. Like, we're not all going to experience mental conditions similarly, but we can relate to broader concepts of this. And that's where I find archetypes to be helpful. And as I said, everybody is going through their own experience of this, and everybody's journey will loosely fit the archetypal process. And that's why understanding alchemy is really helpful, because it demonstrates a path that many of us will walk on, even though the acute experience of the path will be different for all of us. There'll be certain touchstones, or certain signposts, or certain points that we can relate to, that are oh, okay, this is fairly common for many people. It's just it might taste differently to different people at different times. So as I said, the experience, the femist breakdown of what that is for me is the feminine way, like the spiral, the intuitive, the internal, the complete, the you know, blueprint within the seed point. So like the acorn becoming the oak tree, um, the innate ability to grow, heal, reproduce. And again, I want to acknowledge always my privilege in my ability to reproduce with my body. And I know that's not the experience that everybody has. And I want to be very clear. Everybody can experience this transformation. Everybody can experience alchemy. Everybody can experience transformation at whatever level they're able to experience it at, with whatever limitations they have and have come in with and experience. Just because you haven't had a baby and birthed from your womb does not mean you don't have a energetic womb space that creates and births ideas, that creates and births new versions of yourself, that creates and births your own healing. Like everybody has access to the energetic, etheric components of this. I talk about this more in the balance masculine guide sessions, and how we all have a masculine and feminine aspect energetically and etherically. We may not have the physical manifestation components of the masculine and the feminine embodied. So some of us present and have the organs and the glands and the hormones associated with masculine or feminine. Some of us even have a womb space, but up until this point have not been able to conceive and gestate a fetus, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we do not have access to the energetic experience of womb and rebirth and all of that. That is just simply not the case. So we can all experience a rebirth, a spiritual rebirth, an etheric sort of rebirth, an energetic rebirth, and we're experiencing it all the time. Every time we wake up, every time we go down for a nap, every time we change something and grow it and make it new. Okay. And so what guides us through that is our own inner mystical connection, our own inner mystic, that part of us that is already connected to source, that is already connected to source's energy, source's blueprint, source's plan, that is already connected to the all, that is already connected to the evolving impulse, the impulse to stay alive, the impulse to keep going, the impulse to produce and reproduce. We have connection to that experience, that aspect of ourselves. That is an archetypal aspect. I believe everybody is a mystic, and they just come to that in their own time. So it's part of the archetype of being a human being. We have that part and parcel within the human package. And so I like to go about it the feminine way. So that's not necessarily the linear way. That's not necessarily the structured way. Although I do like having the archetypal storyline, the archetypal cyclical markers of alchemy. So it's the mirroring of the masculine and feminine ways, the masculine arguably being the structure, being the form, being um, the progressive, um, laddered sort of way, right? These markers, the matrix almost ish, but yet as we go into that in the balanced masculine, I go into it so much deeper. Those are actually also feminine, because the masculine and the feminine are intertwined within one another. So even the feminine has masculine aspects of the feminine, and the masculine has aspects of the masculine has aspects of the feminine has aspects of the masculine. So they're interwoven. So even when you go deeper into the masculine, there will still be the presence of feminine within the masculine, because these are symbiotically connected and inextricably connected. So the alchemist, like that's alchemy is the process of transformation. It's transforming, it's shifting, it's metabolizing, it's rebirthing, it's renewing, it's archetypal, it's elevating. And for me, spiritual alchemy means healing, elevating my mind into my higher mind, having my super consciousness. It means ascending from a place where I was and moving higher, refining, lifting, releasing density, releasing not truth, releasing falseness, releasing false beliefs, releasing false programming, false patterns. And I say false in the sense that they're not really true of who I am, not at my core, not in my essence, not in being loved. So 2 episodes back, I spoke about my rebirth and just feeling like I could release the wound of rejection because it wasn't actually true. But it was a bit of a journey to release that. My true nature is I'm not rejected. I'm whole. I'm worthy just by being here. And that's the truth for everybody. So if we have anything that contradicts that truth, that's like an additive. That's like a layer. It's a pattern. It's a habit. It's a belief system. It's a piece of program. It's malware. And we get to burn it off. We get to refine it. We get to release it. We get to remember that we're not that. And in the process of remembering that we're not that and remembering that that's just simply not true, we get to look at all the circumstances that bolstered that reinforced that kept that structure in place, that the scaffolding that kept that anchored. And we get to dissolve all of that as well. And that's why I love alchemy so much, because every time I look at something in terms of healing, I would see like, okay, we could silo this thing and we could sublimate this thing and we could put it to the side. We could sweep it under the rug. But what does that do for the thing? It's still under the rug. We haven't actually dealt with it. And every time I came across like, oh, shadow stuff that we don't look at, we don't draw, we don't have anything to do with it. We don't draw attention to it. We pretend it's not there. We act as if it's not influencing us. Again, it's still affecting us. Just because we close our eyes doesn't mean it's not there. Just because we refuse to look at it doesn't mean it's not there and it's not affecting us. And for me, I kept thinking, well, this was a very innate, intuitive revealing for me. I did certain levels of research, but I was really mindful to see how is this coming up in me without the interference of other people's perspectives, because this felt really sacred to me. And it was something that I had to come to on my own. And that's the feminine part of it. I wasn't looking for somebody else's scaffolding, instruction, experience, scientific discovery for what I was going through. I really wanted to see it reveal itself within me and start to notice the patterns and the archetypal aspects of it. It's felt, it's embodied, I know this is within me. I know this is an innate experience because it hasn't been something that I was constantly looking for external validation while I was going through. And so because I know that I've had to find this from within and I found the spots from within and I see the overlay of how this is part of the human experience, I know that everybody has a birthright to this. Everybody has a birthright to be able to alchemize the stuff that's not them, to reveal the gold of who they are, to reveal the essence of who they are. So this like spiritual alchemy, this refinement, this way was my way to direct the energy, my way to intend my reality, my way to partner with what nature already was doing and living and doing it by divine command. And I say divine command as in we are here living, we are born here living. I mean, we could contest it. There is such a thing as suicide, but otherwise you're brought here. You're here, you're living. Like argue it all you want, you're here. So there's a part of it that's like you're commanded to live and thrive and keep going and evolve and regenerate and reproduce like that's just part of it. That's part of the command. That's the evolutionary impulse. That's the impulse to stay alive. That's part of our innate divine design, our innate divinity that we all have access to. So knowing that has given me the utmost faith and trust that everything that is unfolding. And I don't have to, as I said in the last episode, scrape my way through, claw my way through this cave to find the light. The light is already here. It's already within me. It always has been. I don't have to become this perfect thing on the outside to recognize the perfection of the design that's already going on within. It's already here. And I would hear people say these things and I would hear these phrases and I would read religious texts and yoga sutras and I understood to a degree that this was the way it was supposed to feel. Conceptually, I knew that there was a peak experience or there were multiple peak experiences that aligned with this idea of internal divinity. And I just couldn't embody it. I couldn't feel it. I could feel it to a degree, but it wasn't, I knew that truth was there, but it wasn't something I could hold and sustain for very long. Sooner or later, I'd get distracted by a mini melodrama in my life or something I had to accomplish. And I would be confronted with the patterns of the way I grinded myself to get to the next thing without allowing myself the pleasure of enjoying being here. Is effectively, I had to switch my focus from destination focus to journey focus to appreciate the journey because I didn't have that appreciation. And partly because I was like white knuckling it through so many situations. So for me, alchemy is the way. Alchemy is the way that we can burn it off. We can be the most sustainable. We can get rid of the residue. We can include all parts. We can reclaim everything for the benefit of our growth. We can turn all of the shit into gold. We can bring everything into the fold. We can honor the tapestry that is our life up to this point, and we can get excited about what's coming because we've expanded to this perspective and this purview, and never again will we be ignorant or blind to it. Like when we hard win these, not even hard win, even if it comes easy, regardless, whatever you've been able to expand in your capacity for your perspective into truth and love and that life-giving force, it doesn't get taken away from you. You may experience pain and grief that feels like it will rock all of your belief systems, but you still have the taste and the spark and the knowing of your innate divine right. That doesn't go away. So every time you go through this, you can rest assured that the process is unfolding. So being a mystic, it's already within, and it's almost like I'm just peeking through the window. Like I can see as God does. I can see that I'm already moving towards this peak experience, this enlightened, exalted version. It's already happening all the time. I'm already knowing more about who I am and what I like, especially once I really put down the hooks and pulls from the external, almost like the puppet strings, right? And so we're already moving in this direction. We're already moving towards it because we're connected. We are destined for this. And all we have to do is release the resistance, right? The resistance is the drag, is what takes the time, I mean, I also believe in divine timing. There's many things that have to come into play. And as I said in the last episode, I kept understanding this, and all these like things kept dawning on me to anchor into a North Star, to have my values direct me, to understand my intentions, to understand the energy, to be a match for the things that I wanted. I understood all that, but it wasn't until they really hit with enough knowing and intensity that they became belief, with enough practice, with enough time. But it doesn't necessarily have to take that. Just because I'm saying that that's what it took for me and how I experienced it doesn't mean that's how people have to experience it. You could have a spontaneous experience of releasing and just knowing, right? So it's already happening. It's already and the drag could be our resistance to it, right? Our evolution is already happening. The rivers are already running, right? And the feminine means that I'll surrender to the innate wisdom, and trusting my body will do the process for me. I don't need an external initiation. My spirit and my soul doula me through. The plan is the plan, right? I am guided through this whole experience, through this spiral, and all the twists and turns and truths and revelations through the whole experiences. I am guided. And that's when I've evoked this inner teacher and student. I understood the language of it. This is why I talk about it being an archetypal process, because you meet aspects of yourself along the way. You meet the inner childlike aspect of you that's curious and wise and has the abundance of imagination that can unlock you from being gridlocked into this pattern of what life means and what you have to be and what you have to do, right? When we activate that aspect of ourselves, that inner child that can think of any possibility. I spoke about this 2 episodes ago where like my inner child is so similar to my son's experience. He's a child and I give him any like objection to something and he can surmount it within seconds. Like, no, I'll solve that because of blah, blah, blah. Like just this boundless energy to figure it out. My imagination is not limited by your experience of the external, mom. My imagination and what I can accomplish is not limited based on your experience of what you've accomplished. Like this is what he's saying to me. And it's an incredible reminder for me. Like, yeah, I don't want to be limited by my past and my preconceived notions of something and somebody else's idea of what's possible in this world. And so we get guided by this inner experience, and then we can activate this inner teacher student relationship where we're guided to specific books to read and we're guided to specific ways of interpreting things. And of course it's very helpful to have people on the outside. It's very helpful to have supports. I've been coached and mentored by some incredible people. I've gone to therapy and met some incredible people, and they're helpful, and it's been the guiding light sometimes when I felt like I just couldn't figure it out, or when I felt like my undoing was leading me to more crazy as opposed to giving me anything to feel like a port in the storm. They were lighthouses on my journey. And so I'm so thankful for that. But I am fully aware that it was my journey. Like I had to walk it. Nobody could walk it for me. It couldn't be like, can you put my soul in your backpack for a bit and walk for the next 10 miles? Because you're really good at walking those miles and you already know those things. Like you knew how to heal your body. You knew how to heal your nervous system. You knew how to heal your somatic response to the world around you. Can you just do that for me? Like, how can I tap into that and you do that for me? And I had to learn it. I had to learn how to rest my nervous system. I had to learn the language of my body. I had to learn the language of energy. And as I said earlier, that's the next iteration of human evolution. If we cannot learn how to read energy, how are we supposed to pick up on the subtlety of what we're doing and experiencing and what's for us and what's not? How can we learn the language of our bodies and the language of archetype and the language of intuition and instinct? Like that requires a deeper understanding beyond emotional intelligence and psychological intelligence. It requires us to learn the language of energetics, which is, oh my God, so exciting for me. So exciting for me because it's like interpreting what information your body's telling you along with the thoughts and the quality of the thoughts and the quality of the feelings that are coming in, and sussing out the vibration and feeling and experience of truth so that no matter what is presented to you and how it's presented to you, you can feel the subjective truth, you can feel the objective truth, you understand the subtlety and the energetic difference in feeling those things so that you can make informed decisions. I mean, we're in the age of information. We have so much information at our fingertips. Like my kids are growing up in an era where if you want to know something, you just look it up. But we have so much information and so much misinformation. Not only that, what's right for you at any given moment. You have to trust the way something feels. And you have to trust that your interpretation of how it feels is not necessarily projection or a trauma response or something from the past or something that's been, heavily manipulated for you to feel it a certain way. We're learning how to feel people's energy, feel people's essence, feel what's going on with people. And we also need to distinguish what's theirs and what's mine. What's the truth feel like? So this is where things get really exciting for me. And this is where that's dependent on your internal connection with your like inner mystic, with your intuition, with your inner guidance. That's your teacher student dynamic, where when you're starting to learn the language, you're getting symbols, but then you have to somehow interpret and intuit those symbols. You're getting metaphor, you're getting archetypal experience, and you have to intuit, well, what stage am I at? Well, what does this feel like? Does it feel like I went through that? Does it feel like I somatically healed that? Where am I experiencing tension in my body? And what is that related to? Why is it that every time I go into this place an experience, I could feel my body tighten up. What does this mean to me? What does this mean to me this time? And does it mean something different next time? Does it mean, you know, what we used to see is like good or bad? Or is it not right now? Not for me right now. We're starting to pick up on the nuance of just because this didn't feel right this time doesn't mean that whole thing is bad, wrong, right off. No, that's too simplistic. That's not nuanced enough. That doesn't involve enough context. So I believe we all have these abilities to discern this. I believe that's part of what we're growing into and evolving, because we're going to need it, because things are getting more and more complex. Information is everywhere. We are now understanding more and more how to use our minds and how to use our mind as a tool, that the mind is not the captain, that the mind can be swayed and persuaded. The mind can do brilliant things for us, but it is not the, at least the egoic mind is not the steerer of the ship. And coming to terms with even what ego and personality means, and not vilifying the ego necessarily, the personality, but finding a way to integrate what we've been given, what we have, what is part of our human experience, our human body, our mind, our whole complex, our soul, spirit, mind, body complex. How do we use those components, and how do we use them in tandem with one another, in unification, instead of having discord internally and dis-ease? Like if we're not feeling at ease in our bodies, and we're not feeling at ease in our minds, and we're not feeling at ease in our experience, at least enough for us to integrate, rest, enjoy, then there's a wake-up call. There's something that we're being communicated. And so how do we sort through that, and how do we walk ourselves through that process, and how do we walk through this as archetypal initiations into expanded consciousness versus archetypal ways of healing ourselves? This is all within our realm of possibility. It's all within our ability to realize and experience. And it requires an internal perspective, an internal language, an internal way of knowing and communicating, a barometer for truth, an orientation to a North Star, an internal compass, a way of perceiving the world and a way of interacting with the world that results in wisdom, as opposed to like unconscious repetition of patterns and programs. And so that's what alchemy has given me. It's been this self-initiated journey with my spirit to refine and purify and create new and rebirth experiences, and connect with the inner archetypes of like the inner child, the inner teenager, the version of me that's the teacher, the version of me that's the student, the higher self version of me, the version of me that's parenting myself, the version of me that shows up courageously for things, the version of me that, is so connected to everything that's happening that I can just relax ultimately and trust and have love and faith for the whole experience. Like on that emotional scale, David R. Hawkins' emotional scale, sometimes you can zoom right up to the top and just be like, you know what? I have faith. I have love. I know this is a benevolent experience I'm having. I may not know it right now. I may not feel like it right now, but I understand it's unraveling for me. Okay. So that is another little explanation of alchemy and how it's for all of us, and how it can be helpful to understand the alchemical stages, to know where you're at. So that's the next episode. I'm going to talk about the various stages. So, in a broad sense, some people identify with the 3 stages. Some identify there's 4. And then it can be further broken down into 7 stages. And to know these stages is to have archetypal benchmarks or archetypal signposts to know where you're at in the process of transformation. Knowing that these stages are pretty archetypal. You'll go through them and maybe some of them super fast. Maybe this happens within a matter of minutes as you alchemize an old feeling or a difficult feeling or an old piece of trauma, right? Or this can be a journey that unfolds over a lifetime. Like, this is in the macro and the micro. Transformation is already happening on various scales, whether they're grand, as I said, a whole lifetime, whether it's years. I mean, I've been in a particular transformation now for the last 3 years. And so that has been a very illuminating journey, a very illuminating um, trip around the sun. And I know it's part of an ever evolving, like, full human lifetime cycle that's happening and unfolding for me. So, next episode, I'm going to talk about these stages, as I said. And again, if you'd like to get a hold of me, if you'd like to connect with me, I am on Instagram at Femyst, FEMMYST. My name is Ashley. Thank you for listening, and see you soon.